This emerging international is not formed primarily along party lines. So it's different than some of the internationals before. Anybody who's down with this set of ideas, set of principles, whether you're with a party, you're with a collective, acting as an individual, you're acting in a commune, whatever it may be, if you can get down with this in practice, then we think this is a space for you and we want to ask you to join it. Since 2004, I've been involved in some of the major climate actions around the world, and we've been, to a degree, conference hopping, trying to influence what was going on in Copenhagen, Paris. And that plays its role, it has its significance, but we keep meeting on their terms, within the parameters and framework that they're largely setting. At what point are we going to set the terms of the conversation and debate, and then at what point are we going to move to real concrete action?
I was one of the participants in Venezuela in the founding of the International of EcoSocialism, going into the rural area of Yaracuy, in this sort of Afro-descendant, maroon town that have tried to figure out how they're going to create food security for themselves and going back to their historical roots of the type of food that they have. And during a massive political war that's happening in Venezuela, it could house 100 people from around the world. That was very transformative.
In the process of bartering and trading that is especially strong in Afro-Venezuelan communities that hosted the first EcoSocialist International, you have an ability to not solve all of the problems, but to say, hey, if the problems on the ground in our communities are not about what we have and don't have, but about money, then let's eliminate that problem altogether. Let's trade what we have and talk to one another, trade with one another, that no one is lacking without a dollar bill exchanging hands, that we are fed, that we are housed, that we have the educational, the medical, the interpersonal needs all met.
Where people have experience of sustainable living and have had a culture of doing that hasn't been interfered with or hasn't been successfully stopped, they are apt to be at a higher rate of civilization about adapting to a future in which we're going to need levels of sustainability that our Western civilization or lack of civilization has run into problems with.
The Venezuelan state supported us, but it was all directed, led, and controlled by grassroots communities. We don't want to divide ourselves, we need to unite ourselves and bring together people that don't usually talk. So the idea was that the body of Mother Earth herself would be our form of organization. So we divided ourselves among the 5 elements, and each group had the task of coming up with a plan of action over the short, medium, and long term.
Entonces nos planteamos hablar sobre el aire como la voz de la Madre Tierra, hablar sobre el fuego como las energías de la Madre Tierra, la tierra, todo lo que tiene que ver con la salud, la alimentación, el agua como la leche de la Madre Tierra y finalmente el éter o el espíritu. Echar para atrás 500 años para ver 500 años adelante. Eso se corresponde con momentos de la humanidad donde el colonialismo comenzó a invadir diferentes territorios, sobre todo a Asia, África y América. El colonialismo europeo se planteó ir a posesionarse de las tierras y de los recursos de los otros.
All the language of the plan, you'll read, it's we will do this, we commit to doing this, we weren't here to make demands. The powers that be are doing their job. The question is, what are we going to do?
Now that there's this plan of action, what greater place to come to spread the news in the United States than Jackson, that is trying to become the most radical, transformative city with an organization like Cooperative Jackson's, who has been laying a lot of the ground to talk about solidarity economy, about just transitions, about ecological sustainability.
The solidarity economy from Co-op Jackson is specifically mentioned in the EcoSocialist program, and so that's what drew us here. We are an agent of bridge building at the societal level on what practices and designs of human society we can reach consensus accords on that are life-serving and that we preserve as such, and which we abandon as obsolete to thriving wellness in the world.
Welcome to historic Jackson. Mississippi had 555 free people during slavery. Most of them lived in this area. This was so well developed and so controlled by black folk that some of the wealthiest people in the country, the most famous entertainers, writers, Du Bois, and all of them came along this street. Poor black people came from around the state, trying to fashion a better life for themselves in the Great Migration. They will migrate into Jackson and regional cities across the South as they migrate north. And let me say that the Jackson movement and the Birmingham movement were parallel movements running at the same time. Same themes, same issues.
All the problems that we face in this world, it's all based on some form of separation. Even the destruction of the planet, which is entirely something that's caused by human beings, came from our anthropocentric mindset, anthropocentrism, seeing us as something different or at the center of or separate from the earth and everything else. Is the, you know, and only our needs need to be met at the expense of everything else.
We don't view the earth as an entity or as like a living spirit, so like that, or like like the trees and all these things, so like they're just commodities and resources, even within a lot of socialist circles. So I feel people are trying to recreate a consciousness that's been just tried to be destroyed and taken off the earth.
At some point in the recent past, I began to realize that the paradigm of socialist revolution that we had always been struggling for, the idea that we would take control of the industrial economy and use it for collective good instead of for private profit, that there was a problem even with that, given the level of industrials. And in the 1950s, you could say that we could do something like that and still have an ecological relationship with the earth. Today, it's impossible.
The rape of Africa, you know, the rape of Asia, the rape of these minerally rich, fertile areas, right, is directly connected to the industrialization that have led to the destruction of our planet. You know what I'm saying? And then you can't separate how the people that live in these rich areas are treated in order to get them out of the way to get to these things.
How do you look at the world from the integrated systems of how the world itself works and why it works this particular way here, and how does that relate to, you know, the deserts in North America and Africa, et cetera, and bringing all that knowledge together. I think this particular process and the people who to this point have been assembled in it are struggling through those types of questions in a way we haven't necessarily done collectively anyway in a long time.
You've got to go through the process where you actually sit down and not vote things out, but talk it through until everybody is satisfied, they understand and accept it.
Coming into this room, I knew one other family, and now I know a whole collective of other people, and we will network and we'll be able to work together and then go over to other countries and network. And I think it's all about helping each other.
To me, the most important thing is to create very strong grassroots ecological communities in which people live their lives in a different way And on the basis of that, we can join together in mass movements around the world and reverse the course of, really the destruction of the course of evolution and the liberation of life on Earth.
For us, it's like, well, how do we heal the soil? How do we start to move our community towards food security, food sovereignty? And then more important than that, how do those practices transform society?
It's important to see where your food comes from. It's important to be involved and to also not worry about yourself, but worry about the animals and the environment around you.
A form of socialism that has like the environment and our relationship to it at the heart of what it's trying to do is like, it's just so crucial during this time. There are certain things that like once they happen, we can't necessarily reverse them, like environmentally speaking. So if we don't address this now, we don't know if we're gonna have a future.
I believe in a social ecological revolution that would destroy all systems of domination, and that if we don't do that, we're in real serious trouble.
Here we are now, and this laid out. Talk about I can't do this or not. Yes, we can. There's nothing except capitalism with its borders and its boundaries that has been set up to keep us from surviving, to keep us dependent on either ignorant ideologies or ignorant economic systems and human beings.
We have to develop goals that, you know, like match some common unity goals. I think that's a big important thing that we can work on together. Some goals and some unity that like makes sense in all the different places that we come from.
The process of grassroots building of independent alternative realities, realities that both enable and empower people, but also create a harmony with the earth. This is the realities of eco-socialism.
Seeing like the lived experiences of people who may not even necessarily be using the word eco-socialism, but who like those principles are part of their like daily life. A lot of Black, Indigenous, and Campesino communities in Latin America.
It's a time when we must join with Mother Earth and begin in the mothering process, the recreating process, all over again, so that we can reclaim not just water resources and land resources, but reclaim our basic humanity.